Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now let's pick up on one of those stories with our guests here in the studio, and that's the proposals to force companies to publish information about the difference between the highest and lowest paid employees. It's been one of the themes of Theresa May's premiership. Here's what she said on the subject at the launch of her leadership bid back in July.
The FTSE, for example, is trading at about the same level as it was 18 years ago, and it's nearly 10% below its high peak. Yet in the same period, executive pay has more than trebled. And there is an irrational, unhealthy and growing gap between what these companies pay their workers and what they pay their bosses. So as part of the changes I want to make to corporate governance, I want to make shareholder votes on corporate pay not just advisory but binding. I want to see more transparency, including the full disclosure of bonus targets and the publication of pay multiple data. That is the ratio between the CEO's pay and the average company worker's pay.
Right, and Theresa May said it there. It's actually the difference in earning between the chief executive and the average employee when it would come to forcing companies to publish pay ratios, not the lowest and the highest necessarily. Do you support the idea, Stephen Crabb, of publishing company pay ratios?
Yes, so I quite like the idea, not because I think it will achieve a huge amount on its own.
So what's the point?
But it represents an approach that we are taking to the corporate world, saying, look, in the 21st century, we need a much more responsible kind of capitalism in our society. We want businesses to be doing the right thing. And actually, by using the pay ratio as a lever for shining a spotlight on wider business practices, I think that's really important.
Right, but as we just heard from Jim Waterson there, and no doubt some of the companies would argue, that it can create misleading comparisons if in the end you distort to some extent what the pay ratios are between the highest and the average employee, then who's that going to benefit?
Yeah, sure. So there'll be imperfections around this. This is not a perfect tool by any means, but by the very fact that you're encouraging businesses to do it means that they are going to have that conversation at their board level. They're going to have the discussion within their company, and that is a healthy thing, I think.
Do you agree it's a good idea?
I think it's a good idea, but Theresa May said there, as you just said, that she's talking about average pay to the highest pay. And what that does is it cuts out what's happening at the bottom end of the pay scale. The reason that this is important is not just because those huge gaps in wealth in the country are bad for all of us, but because businesses that try to take all of their employees with them and reinvest in their local communities and make sure that they're putting pounds in the pockets of people who spend them and get the economy moving, these are the businesses that tend to do well and survive and help to build the British economy. It's about taking a long-term business approach, not just a quick short-term gain approach, which has done so much damage to us before. So it's really important that she gets the detail right on this, and we'll certainly be challenging her about that.
But what about the point that if you can't take businesses with you and in the end you alienate them, and the reason a lot of people are arguing that she is moving away to some extent from her early rhetoric was the tone at her party conference, and business didn't like it.
Well, there are a lot of businesses who actually are already doing things like this. There are businesses like Lidl the other day who said that they would pay all of their staff a living wage. There are lots of businesses that are pursuing the co-op model that companies like John Lewis have pioneered. There are businesses who want to invest in this country, invest in their workforce and put something back into the community. And those are the businesses that the Prime Minister ought to be supporting.
Right. Well, Stephen Crabb, who said this on pay? Companies should publish the ratio of the pay of its top earner compared to its average employee. If it can be justified by performance, they should have nothing to fear.
You're probably going to tell me it's Ed Miliband.
It was Ed Miliband from June 2011 when he called for greater scrutiny of top pay. And how about this one? We will make sure employees have a voice when executive pay is set by requiring employee representation on remuneration committees. Where's that from?
Same guy?
It's Labour, Labour 2015 manifesto. So, I mean, you have unashamedly, or the Conservative government's unashamedly stolen Labour's ideas that you so vociferously criticised when he made them.
Yeah, I mean, it's about responding to what our voters and people up and down the country are saying. And we didn't spend 3 months on a referendum campaign just talking about the European issue. We were talking to people about their jobs, their working lives, the things that they feel discontented about in their societies. And actually, if one of the things that we've taken from that And it wasn't just Theresa May's talking about this during the leadership campaign. There were other leadership candidates in July talking about this. Then I think that's a healthy thing, that we're listening.
Right, so you have moved, except Theresa May's now backing away from some of those very ideas that she was aping from Labour.
Well, let's see what's in the Green Paper tomorrow. When we talk about Green Paper, it's a consultation. It should be the starting point for a wide-ranging discussion.
Right, well, let's have a look, because Ed Miliband's just tweeted about this. He's having some fun here. More Marxist anti-business ideas. But these Tories... What's your response?
Well, Ed's having a bit of fun there on Twitter. I think the serious thing is, let's have a look what's in the Green Paper tomorrow. I think, and Lisa's right, the vast majority of businesses in this country are run by decent people looking to create something of value for their companies and for the wider economy. What we should be looking at is practical things that actually can shine a spotlight on those things which need improvement.
Like putting workers on company boards. Should that happen?
Well, for me, that one always sounded a bit gimmicky, if I'm absolutely honest with you. I'm interested in having a discussion about how we strengthen workers' voice within companies. When I've gone around and visited companies around the UK, I've been really impressed with just how good some of the working relationships are between trade unions and bosses. And maybe we should think about how we replicate some of those relationships.
It's a gimmick.
I just think it's a bit patronising to say that you want to give workers voice but shut them out of the boardroom. I mean, at the end of the day, this isn't about giving workers voice. This is about restoring to workers power over the things that affect their lives. Workers in companies, as most decent business leaders will tell you, are the greatest asset that any company has. They are the people who drive the company and build the wealth that is then reinvested in that company and lines the pockets of shareholders too.
Are there other ways of giving them a voice?
Over how that company is run.
Are there other ways of giving employees a voice rather than putting them on boards?
I think there are lots of ways of giving employees a voice. One model, for example, is the co-op model, where the company is actually owned by its own workforce and decisions are made cooperatively between those workers and the management as well. Trade unions are another way that you give workers a very strong voice, and it'd be great to see something from Theresa May about restoring the rights of trade unionists to organise and recognition for trade unions too. There are lots of things that can be done, and the problem with what Theresa May is doing is that she's willing the ends but she's not prepared to countenance the means.
And in the end, Stephen Crabb, these ideas, according to the Tories, were anti-business when Labour proposed them, but they're sensible and reasonable when it's a Conservative government who may or may not do them.
Well, I think you always have a more sensible and reasonable discussion with business when you have Conservatives in office, genuinely.
Oh. Give you the last word then to respond to that.
Well,
is that true? Labour's relationship with business means it couldn't actually enact these sorts of policies.
I just think this is such an outdated point of view. I mean, we are a party formed by and for working people. By definition, they need somewhere to work. And that's why we've always had very, very good and strong relationships up and down the country with companies, not just the big corporations, but actually small and medium-sized businesses who are the backbone of the economy.
All right, we'll leave it there.
I've been